This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
All right, I'm not talking about anything today before I talk about the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic that's coming up on Saturday, February 3rd. Because I blew it yesterday. You and I even talked about when I was going to talk about it on the show. Then I got so excited about other things and it just slipped my mind.
I understand.
Which
it happens.
Is bound to happen from time to time. So here's the deal, friends. You know it. If you're watching on YouTube, check this out. The aerial shots, the drone shots as our videographers captured the beauty that is the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. This was last year's that you're seeing. We're doing our third annual Saturday, February 3rd. This is in support of Uncles and Aunts at Large and Kids Sport St. Albert. We're doing everything we can to remove financial barriers for kids to get into sport and also to provide supports for families and individuals as well that can use it. It's going to be a day of so much fun. Johnny Infamous will be spinning the tunes.
Woo.
We're going to have a bunch of bonfires and beers and burgers. And, of course, we'll have 10 different rinks with 24 teams. It's an absolute blast. All for a great cause. You can sign up right now to volunteer. You can sign up your team, or you can inquire about sponsorship opportunities. You just go to our website, ryanjesperson.com, click on events, and you'll see it from there. That's Saturday, February 3rd, the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic.
I can't
geared
wait.
up for that, pal?
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a good one. It's always a highlight of the year. This episode of Real Talk is going to be a special one. It's our first Real Talk Roundtable of 2024, and we're not messing around. Lynda, Steele, and Jody Vance in just a second, but the fact is this episode doesn't happen without Rello, who's putting out a call to those of you that at this time of year, you may not call it a resolution, but the fact is when the calendar flips over, you start thinking about maybe shaking things up. You've been dreaming about starting a new career, being your own boss, I don't know, leaving cubicle life behind for good. If unlimited earning potential, plus all that other stuff sounds good, a career in real estate could be your perfect match. You can get started today by enrolling with Rello. That's R-E-L-O. Rello's Alberta's top real estate school. They want to support you every step of the way, from studying for your exam to getting your license. Plus, with Rello, there's that advantage of studying 100% online, so you can do it on your own schedule. Right now, a great special for Real Talkers with the promo code RealTalk, all one word. They're going to knock 20% off the cost of any Rello course. That's the promo code RealTalk at Rello.ca. They are Canadian broadcast legends. They've built audiences over the course of decades in front of TV cameras, talking sports and news and politics and life. The fact of the matter is, people trust what they have to say. It's why their show Steele and Vance sees such success on the West Coast on Check, and it's why they're back here by popular demand. It's a real pleasure to say hello to our good friends, Lynda Steele, Jody Vance, who have already been pointing out on social media today, and we don't blame you. You are up bright and early. Thank you for setting your alarms earlier than normal to make this happen. Lynda Steele, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Ryan, and everybody listening and watching.
Yeah, Jody Vance, how are you doing, my friend? It's been a while since we've last chatted.
It's been too long. In fact, Happy New Year to you. Good to be back with you.
Yeah, can I get into something that's just real life, and I don't want to call it a downer. It's real life, but it was. I'm assuming that it was a bit of a tough Christmas for you. You had a tough year. You okay to get real with it right now?
Oh, I'm always ready for getting real with you, Ryan. And I know I'm not alone in having suffered a significant loss in our family. My stepdad passed away at the end of July after a short battle with cancer, and it turned our family upside down. Ironically, no, I don't even know what the right word is. Our collective GP also passed away 14 days later. So we found ourselves in crisis on multiple fronts. There's my stepdad. That was from this spring, sitting with my mom at his favorite gay bar in Palm Springs, hanging with the drag queens, wearing the wigs. Like, Bruce Bean was my mentor, a force of nature, an amazing individual, lived to be almost 86, lived a very rich, long and beautiful life. But very difficult holiday season, as I know so many people across the country and really across the world have suffered along with me, having an empty seat at the table. But we gathered, and we did so with my mom, and we made the very, very best of this season, even with that hole in our hearts, as it were.
Yeah, it's like the holidays just, for a lot of people, obviously there's these times that if you have kids in the house, it's this magical time, or if like for us, I tweeted about this kind of on the flip side, Jody, my heart was really full this Christmas because, and I don't talk about it too much, but our boxer Moses, I recognize we're talking about humans and then dogs, and there's a difference, but still
Very similar in your heart.
Very, and Moses has had a really difficult year, and we know he's kind of, it feels weird to talk about it, but on borrowed time a little bit. He's rallying. He's a big tough guy, but we
said he was almost 16, right?
Well, no, we're hoping he'll see 12, but
12, sorry.
Yeah, but he's a big boxer,
Mine went
right?
16.
That's wild. Smaller?
My big dog went.
Smaller?
You
A
never
big
know.
dog?
No,
16?
Fenway was he was a collie, shepherd, cross. He did have some beagle to make his legs a little bit shorter in it, or corgi. But no, he was a 65, 70-pound dog.
Wow.
He lived to be almost 16 and ran 3K that day. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so there's good hope for your boy.
Yeah, well, Moses couldn't run 3K because I wouldn't be able to get him 3K. I couldn't run 3K, but my point being that was made this Christmas kind of special for us because we didn't know that or didn't expect that he would be with us. But then we think of, I don't think she'd mind me bringing it up. I checked in with our good friend Supriya Dwivedi yesterday, and obviously she lost her husband this year. Very horrific and tragic circumstance. A very young guy and cancer,
Terrible.
just merciless in an oops passing, and we checked in with her, and she said, yeah, obviously it was a really difficult Christmas, but for her little, her beautiful daughter, the magic of Christmas was there because she's maybe a little bit too young to kind of process everything that's going on. So I mean, just I appreciate checking in with friends and understanding that everybody's holiday brings different emotions to the table, Lynda. It's just the way that it goes.
Yeah, mine was getting up very early in the morning so we could drive out to Surrey, which is about an hour from Vancouver, because my husband is the new Surrey police chief, and he wanted to go say hi to the troops on Christmas morning. And I sat out in the truck and waited for like 45 minutes, and then we drove to the nursing home with a big stocking and some treats for my dad. So my whole experience of living in Vancouver since 2011 has been a dementia journey with my mom first and then my dad. And I'll tell you what, it is a sobering experience to be in a long-term care facility on Christmas Day because it's pretty darn quiet. There's not a lot of people visiting.
Yeah, you call it a dementia journey, and that's for anybody that has any experience in that. They know that the word journey is the right word to choose because everybody's on it, and there's a lot that's kind of unexpected that comes with it. It's tougher if you've not walked miles in those shoes. You can't understand how tough it is.
I wouldn't wish it on my worst.
Yeah, I mean, they call it
friend.
the long goodbye. Yeah, and it's just like saying goodbye and watching a person change into somebody else and sort of slip away, and there's still good moments, but it's a sad, confusing journey that, as Jody says, you'd never wish on anybody.
Yeah, Alzheimer's Awareness Month this month, and is that something that the two of you are sort of like involved in at all, or it's obviously something that would be on your radar based on your family experience?
Well, I've done some work with Clear Alzheimer's, which is sort of the equivalent of the Terry Fox Foundation of nonprofits. They fundraise. Clear fundraises with a volunteer board, and all donations go directly towards research. Definitely trying to push forward anything that might help people to not suffer what Lynda and I and so many millions of others have dealt with on an Alzheimer's or dementia journey. There's got to be a cure. There's got to be a way. There's got to be something we can move forward on this. And if we can help, anybody avoid the tragedy that is the long goodbye, and trying to also lend our experience with managing and caring for our loved ones who suffer Alzheimer's, this horrible disease. But there are lessons to be learned that help you navigate it. And I think that that's a big part of what Lynda and I want to put forward in this month while we, raise awareness and hopefully raise some much needed money for organizations like Clear Alzheimer's, but also be able to share our lived experience to help people that are going through it, that are just starting out on it, because as I'm sure Lynda can speak to here with me, I'm positive in fact is there's no handbook on it when you start down this journey. And when we spoke, we really bonded as colleagues over the subject of having the shared experience of a parent with dementia.
Yeah, no kidding. Jillian in our live chat right now on YouTube says, she says, my mom's had Alzheimer's for years. It's weird having a parent who's there but not. Which is such a good way to put it. We have, my wife Carrie, her uncle is sort of. I mean, this is, they've moved him into care just in the last month, and that's a really difficult time for everybody, right? Like, I get emotional just thinking about it. But they were trying to like make a last family trip happen, and it just everything sort of went sideways so fast that they couldn't, and they got him into the hospital while they were waiting to find a bed in this care center, and meantime he's kind of confused and doesn't understand. In a way, this will probably come out wrong or at least clumsy, but in a way it's almost a blessing that he's a little bit oblivious to what's going on right now, because there's been such turmoil. You know what I mean? But even watching everybody, watching his daughter, he'll tell the same story 5 or 6 or 7 times in a row with 10 seconds in between each story. And it just reiterates to you, wow, this is a merciless disease.
I think the best advice I can give anyone that's, going through the journey or just entering into it is to meet the person where they are. They're not really the same father that you knew, or mother or uncle or what have you. They're a different person. There's still things that are joyous, still parts of their personality that are remaining intact. But the reality is it's such a surreal, bizarre journey where suddenly somebody thinks they've been kidnapped, or they think that you're their girlfriend instead of their daughter. And it's just like a real mind thing, And you sometimes want to fight back and say, oh, no, that's not right. And oh, you're wrong. And so-and-so is dead already if they think their wife is still alive or what have you. And you just can't. You just have to be where they are in the moment, as hard as that is, and go along with it or redirect.
Can I ask you about something completely different, Lynda? I'm embarrassed. So I didn't realize your husband had been named Surrey's police chief. Was that a while ago?
He's just past 3 years, and it has just been a cluster, political firestorm. It has been the most miserable experience for me, watching him try to navigate the politics and the gamesmanship and the nastiness and the rhetoric. Is just like, it's just crazy.
Okay, so I don't want to put you in a tough spot. Like, some people, like when family's involved in things, they can't comment on it. So if you can't, just say. But so if I remember correctly, you and his name's Norm. You and Norm were living in Edmonton. He's had a long career in policing. You obviously a long career in broadcasting. And if I understand correctly, he had been promoted within the RCMP, which is why you moved to the West Coast. Is that right?
Well, he was a deputy chief with the Edmonton Police Service, but the Mounties had decided, you know what, we need to get into the new era of policing. We're not very good at municipal policing, so they decided for the first time ever to go outside their ranks and bring in municipal officers at a high level.
I see.
And he was one of the first and the last for them to do that at the RCMP.
Okay, and then now Surrey's been a bit of a, I don't know if I say case study because it's happening as we speak, but people are keeping an eye on Surrey because there's a lot of talk in Alberta right now about, saying goodbye to the RCMP and implementing an Alberta Police Service. Grand Prairie's implementing a municipal police service right now, saying goodbye to the RCMP there. So can you comment, or do you have an opinion on what's going on in Surrey and what you think is the right move or the wrong move, or am I painting you in a corner here?
Well, remember, Surrey is almost as big as Vancouver now and is predicted to be the biggest city in BC by 2030. So it's growing. There's 10,000 people a month moving in there. And the RCMP do not police a municipality of that size. They normally do smaller jurisdictions. And so Surrey has outgrown the RCMP. It needs its own municipal force that can pivot on a dime, be really reactive to the community. So Norm's task was to build from the bottom up the best municipal police service in Canada, with the best, tactics and training and what have you, that is really responsive to Surrey instead of Ottawa. And so I think a municipal police department is the way to go. The mayor thought that when they were elected, it was a full unanimous decision on council until the one woman who suddenly had a falling out with the mayor changed her opinion and then ran for election as mayor herself in getting rid of the Surrey Police Service, the municipal force, and keeping the RCMP. So it has been a political barnstorm for 3 years.
Jody, I couldn't ignore your facial expression when I was asking Lynda about it. Do you have a strong feeling on it?
Well, I do actually, Ryan, because I mean, Lynda and I talk about this on our show, which, as you mentioned, some people think that family members shouldn't comment, whatever. And on Steele and Vance, when I said this is a big story and it impacts you and we should talk about it. And at first, Lynda was like, I don't want to appear to put my thumb on the scale, I believe is something that was said. And I'm like, you would never do that. And you have the unique position of being able to come at it from a Steele on your side, longtime journalist, incredible communicator. You can educate people, and I can come at it as a frustrated citizen watching this happen. I don't live in Surrey, but I grew up just next to it. And certainly now the upheaval that's happening between the mayor, Brenda Locke, and the province, particularly our Solicitor General and Minister of Public Safety, Mike Farnworth, the showdown that is happening there and the amount of money that is being thrown around and or wasted on a monthly basis. It's $8 million a month that is being wasted with a duplicate of law enforcement in Surrey. And it's just being used as a political football. So yeah, I'm very passionate about it because ultimately we are the bank account for all of this political back and forth. And it's so ugly. And watching how long it's drawn out. And I'm looking at my friend whose husband is, as Lynda points out, doing everything he can to make Surrey as safe as possible, mandated as such by a unanimous vote in council when it all began. And now it's just become this, nightmare of the mayor, the current mayor, trying to get rid of the whole idea. Her first thing out of her mouth when Brenda Locke was elected into office was, I will fire Norm Lipinski. It was just like, what? Jeez. There are so many things going on here. It's just like, what is happening? And the province has said, you know what? No, you're moving forward with this. You asked to do it, and forevermore setting a standard that anywhere, like you said about all the jurisdictions in Alberta doing this shift from the RCMP to a municipal force. There are other jurisdictions in BC talking about doing that as well. And David Eby, our premier, has said, you know what? Once you ask, we're going forward with it. There's no takesy backsies. I don't think he used that term, but you know what I mean? Like, so I've been watching it just like, are you kidding me right now? And something's got to give. Something's got to give.
The Surrey Police Service had almost 500 employees by the time this newly elected mayor said, yeah, we're going to just fire everybody and get rid of them. There was like over $100 million already spent. These were people who in good faith signed up with the Surrey Police Service to serve and protect the citizens of Surrey. They wanted to be part of a groundbreaking, new, modern municipal police service, and they specifically called it a service versus a force or a department because it's in service to the community. And so the reality is that, this mayor who now wants to kill the Surrey Police Service was one of the people who voted for it. And after they spent a ton of money and hired a bunch of people, said, no, I don't want that anymore. And it's like, well, you can't do that either. So the province is saying, listen, you make a decision that better be carefully made because you're not turning around and switching it up.
Okay, so I'm looking at this. This is I'll reference CTV News reporting on this. Reads the headline: High risk, low reward. Critics slam Surrey mayor's policing PR campaign. Let me be very clear. Jody and Lynda and I did not plan on talking about this. We're just freewheeling right now. But I'll Abigail Turner is the reporter here. But this is of interest, I'm sure, especially to our Alberta audience. Let me just read the lead on this story. Mayor Brenda Locke's latest tactic in her fight to keep the RCMP in Surrey is an advertising campaign costing taxpayers $500,000. But this is the point I make. Billboards have been spotted in the city and mailers have been sent to residents, including Councillor Lynda Annis, who is not a member of the mayor's party. people in Alberta will go, ooh. We're talking a lot in Alberta about political parties at the municipal level. The provincial government is musing about it. Lynda, you look like you're going to give yourself a headache. You're saying
do not go down that road. That's the
Don't.
one thing I absolutely hate about municipal politics in BC is the party system. They all run as a slate. They all vote as a bloc. They don't give a rat's you know what about the constituents. They want to push forward their agenda. When you have the ward system and you as a resident in your neighborhood have a civic issue, you know who to talk to. And they sort of feel like they have to at least answer your email or your phone call because they need your vote and they represent you. In the party system, all bets are off. They don't care. You have nowhere to go. They're going to do what they want to do. The voters be damned.
So BC now entering its, I guess it's about 1 year through this drug decriminalization pilot. Is that fair? Doctors and advocates are saying there's more addiction treatment needed. I saw a report in the Tyee that says that basically police were caught on their heels. Nobody was really ready for this. How are the two of you viewing this? Maybe you can give us your real perspective on it 1 year in, Jody.
Well, 1 year in, I can say that I've never seen so many people living with addiction, homeless, struggling, frozen in time in some situations, just on the side streets, all over. It used to be just one little area of Vancouver that was sort of where the collective of people who choose to use drugs would gather. This is now an everywhere and everyone problem. Obviously, fentanyl, a huge reason why decrim became an option put on the table, trying to just save some lives because fentanyl is so deeply embedded in the drug supply here in BC in particular is what I can speak to. But 13,000 people have died over 6 years to this crisis. So certainly public health officials trying their best to save some lives here, because oftentimes it's not on the downtown east side. It's in a bedroom community. It's people using street drugs alone and then dying of a fentanyl overdose. The controversy now, Ryan, is how in British Columbia, we actually need legislation from our provincial government to stop illicit drug use in playgrounds, in schoolyards, at recreation centers, in parks, in places where children are. The legislation put forward was that you must be 15 meters, which is a hop, skip, and jump from a playground or a beach or a park or a rec center. And some advocates for those who choose to use drugs have put forward that that's not fair, that it's not fair to limit where one might use illicit drugs. And that has certainly been a topic on our show on an ongoing basis. And on last evening's show, we had Port Coquitlam Mayor Brad West, who is very outspoken against this illicit drug use in public spaces, and the fact that as a province, we now need to fight for the right to remove illicit drug users from school playgrounds. It's just gotten so far down a rabbit hole now. I look around as a born and raised Vancouverite, and I do not know how we got here.
Lynda, where's your head at?
Well, for one thing, I have seen in the last decade misery. And especially since COVID really sort of pushed people out of the shadows and out of the downtown east side into other neighborhoods where they could panhandle or buy drugs or break windows or whatever. So you started to see it as much more visible every single day. And I live downtown Vancouver, and so I walk a lot. I don't have a car. Every single day, I see someone either slumped in a doorway. A lot of people are sort of, I don't know if you've seen this, but I think with fentanyl, when people do a hit or however they do it, inject it, smoke it, they hunch over in this weird statue-like bent over thing. And you see people every week, I think, is that person dead? I'm not sure. And you're looking at them and you're thinking, okay, I think I saw their hand move. Like, what should I do? In many cases, when somebody has just gotten high, they don't want you to bug them. They certainly don't want to be naloxoned and have you ruin the high. So you see misery everywhere. young people, older people, every culture. And I think, okay, we've done so much around harm reduction as being one of the 4 pillars of trying to deal with addiction. We've done away with enforcement. We don't have really any treatment options, or very, very few, and they're hard to get into. We don't really talk about prevention. We're all about harm reduction. So we have more harm reduction, more safe supply, less policing, and things are getting worse. And so the activists say, let's do more safe supply and even fewer restrictions. And I'm just stuck because I'm so sad for these people whose lives are being destroyed by the toxic drug supply. But I'm not at a place yet where I'm okay with saying the only answer is, instead of trying to treat people and give them a chance at a healthier, happier life, is just to give them more fentanyl or meth or coke or whatever it is that they're choosing to do. So I've just seen a horrific situation at literally my back door. Drug users splayed out in front of our garage door opener for our strata. I mean, it's just so sad.
Yeah, it's, I mean, obviously, homelessness, and I mean, gosh, there's so many contributing factors to this, but it's a reality in every Canadian city. Mental health, obviously, is huge. I don't know if you guys have been seeing what's going on in Edmonton right now, but over the past couple of weeks, police have been dismantling, you know, I guess you call them tent cities, or, you know, homeless encampments, whatever you want to call them. I mean, it's where people are living and where people are staying. And it's been a contentious issue for sure. I saw that, you know, a police officer had said to an MLA, to Janice Irwin, an opposition MLA, yesterday. He said, hey, listen, I didn't volunteer for this one. I didn't ask to do this. It's a tough job for the police. It's tough for people that are being displaced. But may I also say, we got an email here from Jesse, who wrote in yesterday. He said, I may have missed it, but has Real Talk covered the dismantling of Edmonton's homeless camps yet? And the answer to Jesse is no, not yet. So here we go. He says, the media coverage seems to only include the perspective of the advocates for the homeless, and I'd be interested to hear what the general population thinks about this. He says, ultimately, these camps are illegal and detrimental to our downtown. He said, I've heard that shelters are able to accommodate the demand. I don't know about that. He says, but the conditions are so bad there that people are choosing camps instead, and I think there is an element of truth to that. He says, I'd like to get some insight as to what the shelter conditions really are and determine the changes we can make there so that there's no excuse for these illegal campsites. That from Jesse. It's a situation where, like, it's brutal, obviously, and in the tent cities, we're having a difficult time getting law enforcement on the record on this, but there's talk of cartels in there, sexual assaults, someone being burned alive, basically like an absolute free-for-all within the encampments. And also, can we just say, like, I know this may sound heartless, and this show talks a lot about homelessness and houselessness and mental health, and I feel it deeply, and I know you two do as well, and we're empathetic people and we care. But also, you can't just, like, set up encampments wherever. And, like, I'm sorry if that sounds heartless, but, like, that is also a fact. And so I think that people are trying to wrap their minds around this and process the story, and it's a tough one because you don't want to come across, same thing with harm reduction, Lynda. You don't want to sound like a prick or like your heart is made of coal. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that things are out of control right now.
We've had homeless encampments here, big ones, entrenched ones, with all the same kind of crime issues that you spoke about, embedded in neighborhoods where people are having homes broken into, having their lives threatened. And so, yeah, there are. And then the other problem is there's a lot of predators that get attracted to those encampments. They prey on the people who are already incredibly vulnerable. So I don't know what to do. It's become so catastrophic. The crisis is so huge that in Vancouver, the activists say, no, it can't be a shelter space. You have to give them a 700, square foot apartment in downtown Vancouver. And it was like, yep, that's like $1.2 million. That doesn't make sense. We don't have the money to do that. And yet you can't ship them to a cheaper, smaller municipality outside of Vancouver. Everybody would have a heart attack. So I don't know what the answer is. I mean, here in some of the encampments, the activists are demanding running water and showers and heat and propane. But part of the problem is a lot of the people living in these tents, even on city streets, we had a big tent encampment down on West Hastings or East Hastings in the downtown east side. People would have sometimes 8 propane bottles inside the tent. And it was like there have been catastrophic explosions and fires. And then the fire department can't get through the tents to get into buildings to make sure that they don't catch on fire. It's just such a big problem. And the downtown east side has been like a big red light flashing beacon for how long? Decades, about we need to deal with this problem of homelessness, untreated mental health, and addiction. And yet we don't seem to be able to figure out the answer.
Jody, you say like you're born and raised in Vancouver. I know you haven't lived there for your entire career, but you've seen it a lot through the years. Does it seem to be particularly like worse now, or is it just more posts on Instagram? People see it more, or no?
No, it's worse. But it's a problem also. I would point out it's not just here. I mean, you drive down the I-5 to Seattle, and it looks quite similar. You know, you look at what's happened in San Francisco and it looks quite similar. You hear the stories out of Toronto, where I lived for a decade, and there are very similar issues there. Having no place to go for so many people is a huge basis to this, but there's also the poverty piece, and there is the mental health piece, as Lynda pointed out earlier and off the top of this subject. It's a perfect storm right now. The SROs, the short-term rental options, the slums, really. Yeah. Single occupancy. Housing, single occupancy. Sorry, short-term rental. I went Airbnb. It is that early in the morning here. But the single occupancy rooms, with the buildings that have been held by, one particular family. I mean, they were terrible. No running water, sinks full of needles, leaky, moldy, rat infested, bug infested. And that's where people were expected to go. So when you looked inside those that have now been shuttered, people would have moved out to the street. But now the entirety of East Hastings is just, it's a street level community, as Lynda pointed out, with the propane tanks. When the new-ish mayor, the most recently elected mayor, Ken Sim in Vancouver, made the decision to clear the tents along East Hastings, the number of propane tanks that were found, he had held a press conference, and he said, as difficult as it is to have done this, to have uprooted these people that called this area their home, they found enough propane that could have blown up an entire city block. And that was a real jolt for people across the city, for sure, in looking at, there has to be a better way. And what that solution is, I would offer that nobody really knows, because if there was, I brought up Seattle, I brought up San Francisco, other jurisdictions, if something was working somewhere, we would probably put it here, because it's that bad. But to focus only on Vancouver is also flawed, because this is happening throughout communities across British Columbia. There are significant drug problems, significant homeless problems. Fentanyl is an issue not just for the impoverished on the downtown east side. The majority of the deaths to fentanyl, in fact, are middle-aged men in their homes, in their apartments, in communities.
And the biggest
BC.
percentage is construction workers, is what they found out in BC. But I was going to say that the BC government has tried. They have spent millions and millions of tax dollars to buy old hotels and old walk-ups and what have you, to completely move people from tent encampments into these hotels. So the most recent one that happened in my area was, there was a place called Oppenheimer Park in the downtown east side that was just massive, a big tent city kind of thing. They bought 2 old hotels on Granville Street in the entertainment district, a couple of blocks up from where I live, and they mass moved all these people into those 2 hotels. But there were no real wraparound services. So you're moving people who have addictions issues, mental health issues, some, behavioral problems. And there were all kinds of issues. There were something like 1,000 police calls to one of those hotels in the first year because of, B&Es and chaos out in the streets and what have you. And so when Jody talked about the SROs being horrific and that people don't want to stay there, part of the problem with that is that people who are living in them need help. They need wraparound services. They are dealing with their own issues, mental health problems that are untreated. And that's partially why those places are so broken down and full of needles and things are not working and toilets are plugged, is because there needs to be people who are working with them who have the skill set to help these people manage their lives in the healthiest way. And that's not happening either. You're just warehousing a bunch of people with problems in a crappy old hotel on Granville Street.
In a province where you can't even get a GP.
That seems, it seems to be, I mean, we're talking about things that are kind of themed. I mean, I understand that issues around affordability are almost in Vancouver and Toronto on another level, but it's relevant everywhere. Addiction is an issue everywhere. I mean, a lot of these are issues everywhere. As a matter of fact, even, I mean, Jody, I know you felt like you kind of like slipped up or whatever, referenced Airbnb, but James in our live chat says, no, actually, he says short-term rentals are a contributing factor to the overall rental and house pricing issue. He says, let's not overlook that. He's right. I mean, there's like a million factors at play. What works in Vancouver might not be the appropriate solution in Hamilton, but maybe there might be best practice there. But I think the average person, I see someone here on the live chat watch my stuff, says, oh yeah, all the propane tanks and campsites is really terrifying. Rolls eyes, says like, you know, but at the same time, you can't tell me that you look at what's happening right now and you go, this is good, this is fine, this is sustainable.
There were 120.
Like, come on.
There were 120 industrial-sized propane tanks in one city block. And we had already had, I don't know, Lynda, was it like 7 fires in that last, I think it was
And
7.
people who have died.
Oh, gosh. I mean, there's one thing to be said. I get the eye roll on the propane tank. I get it. And James, thank you for the Airbnb note. I appreciate that. I feel less foolish now. But I don't think anybody has the answer. I don't think there is a silver bullet here. It is very complex and complicated. And how do you help the people who are literally the most vulnerable? And it shouldn't be glossed over that for the downtown east side, at least, a large percentage of those living in poverty on the downtown east side are uprooted people who are living with significant generational trauma, First Nations and Indigenous peoples, who have found life to be very difficult just at the get-go. I mean, it's a very complex equation, but it's one that the definition of insanity is playing into, because we continue to do the same thing over and over and over and over again and expect a different outcome, and that's just not happening.
We're talking to Jody Vance, Lynda Steele, the co-host of Steele and Vance on Check. In just a second, I want to ask you about this Health Canada recommendation around a cigarette ban. It's very interesting. It would draw a line over who could purchase smokes in Canada and who couldn't. That in just a quick second. This episode is happening with the support of Real Talk partners like our friends at Eden Landscaping, who want to remind you it's a perfect time of year to start thinking about summer, right? Why not? Especially on a day like, you know, maybe you're getting hammered with a snowstorm or the temperature's starting to fall. Why not envision those summer nights, those long summer nights around the campfire or maybe around your new outdoor kitchen? You can hear the trickle of your koi pond, that new water feature that you had installed, as the kids pitter patter across the new brick hardscape, just how you envisioned it. Eden Landscaping's been doing it all for more than 20 years, and they're a full service landscape company, which means there's no subcontracting. You don't have to worry about anything from the design process all the way through to completion. They do it all at Eden Landscaping. You'll find them online at landscapeedmonton.ca. If your home improvement is going to happen on the inside, then CaliforniaClosets.ca needs to be your first stop. The consultation is always free when you're working with California Closets. And let me tell you, based on firsthand experience, their design team will be able to envision installations that you haven't even thought of. Murphy beds that integrate perfectly into a guest room or a home office, a laundry room that finally has the organization that you've always dreamed of. How about the printer hidden away into a cabinet so it's not always on display? These are the tiny details that set California Closets apart. Nobody does it better than them. Free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. And our friends at Friesen Brothers want to remind you that as Canadian families continue to try to stretch their dollars, there's a tool available to you online or in one of their 16 locations across the province of Alberta. It's their Family Essentials flyer. You can see it online at friesen.com. That's FRESON.com. Not only do they have a great weekly summary of all the savings that you'll find in store, but they've also got recipes for that sort of down-home, real comfort cooking that everybody loves. Easy family meal recipes designed to be affordable from your friends at Friesen Brothers, Alberta grown and Alberta owned. Hanging out with Lynda Steele and Jody Vance. Johnny, infamous, by the way, John Hicks, the producer of this show. I've not yet talked to you about this, asked you about this. Why don't you tee this up for us, and then we'll get to our guests today. Health Canada has recommended that essentially the federal government says that anybody, 2008 would be the cutoff, and anybody born after 2008 would not be allowed ever to buy cigarettes. It doesn't mean you got to turn 18 and then you can buy them. It means you can never buy them, regardless of how old you may become. What do you think about this?
I think some of the youth today would agree with that. I think, we know there's way less smokers, and I don't know. This is I'm not sure if New Zealand has totally done it yet, but I know New Zealand as well has banned cigarette sales. I think it's fully in place now to youth under born after, I think it's 2007. So I think it's a great idea. I mean, if we want to get real, I used to be a smoker and then a vapor, and then now I'm trailed off, right? But like, I wish to God that I had never taken a drag off a cigarette.
Do you remember your first cigarette?
Of course I do. It was horrible.
Can you tell us the story?
It was, smoking section of high school, maybe grade 9 or 10.
Were you trying to impress a girl?
But I came from a small town in Ontario, so holding out to grade 9 or 10, I was one of the people. There's lots of smokers, and they were all young. This is back in the day, right? So, but I think it's a great idea, and I think a lot of youth nowadays, I was talking to someone the other day who was like 18, and they're like, won't it be crazy like 50 years from now? And I think you mentioned this on the show too, when we'll talk about, remember when they used to like light those things up and it literally inhales smoke into their lungs, and nobody thought it was bad for you, like back in the 50s.
But we also
celebrate
and believe in freedom of choice and personal
of course.
freedoms.
And I think tobacco use, especially in the States, it's always going to be a part of like culture, right? Like people have been smoking forever.
We know that the cost of the healthcare system is in the billions of dollars. Let's find out what our guests think about this. Lynda Steele, Jody Vance. As far as I know, are either of you current smokers? No. Big head.
Used to.
Yeah?
Yeah, a long time ago. And you're right. I think they should ban smoking because it's so freaking addictive that anybody who ever smoked knows how hard it is to stop. And that for years after you quit, you're having a glass of wine and all of a sudden you think, I remember my mom was a heavy smoker. I used to have to go buy her number 7 cigarettes and whatever as a kid. And she said something like 10 years after she quit, she was at a party with friends and they were laughing, and she reached down to the ashtray just out of habit to take a cigarette and thought, no. So it's always stuck. That addiction is just burbling away, waiting to sort of leap back out. So can we connect this back to the opioid crisis? Why then, if we're thinking, let's stop people from getting addicted to smoking in the first place, our answer to people who are addicted to hard drugs, toxic drugs, is to give them more drugs, to make the drugs more accessible, to help them use the drugs.
Wow.
So that part of it, I don't get.
But if we're going to be fair on that, you'd probably have to compare apples to apples. You'd probably have to note that people were buying illicit cigarettes that they didn't know what was in them, and people were dropping dead from spontaneous overdose by smoking illicit cigarettes. Because that's more a conversation about safe supply, isn't it?
No, but I'm talking about addiction, though, and sort of even if it was safe supply, fentanyl. Do you want somebody, just as a matter of course, to spend the rest of their life smoking meth that's not going to kill them, or being a fentanyl addict? Shouldn't we be trying to encourage people to break the addiction and lead a healthier lifestyle. So I get it, yeah, but with safe supply, and I'm sorry I hijacked the conversation from smoking, I would be okay with safe supply for a limited time. Okay, you're going to do this for a year and we're going to work with you to sort of get you off of it and into a job and into a healthier lifestyle and mental health supports or whatever, versus, oh, we're not even going to try, just here's a bunch of drugs.
Cactus Sheriff, thank you in the chat. He says New Zealand actually scrapped their ban. So
well, they
it
just
didn't go
announced.
through,
Check this out. So this is The Guardian reporting this. So this was just announced at the end of November. New Zealand's going to scrap its world's first smoking generation ban to fund tax cuts. It's not funny. I know I'm laughing, but it's just basically they need the tax from the cigarettes, and so they're bringing them back for young people. Which Jody is like,
all about the money.
We're back.
It's we're back, baby. But I mean, there's truth in the live chat too. Like people are saying like cigarettes would have never been legal in the first place had we known at the time the negative health impacts. Justin's very right in pointing out that there's indigenous significance, sort of like a spiritual.
I was going to
significance,
mention that as
a
well.
connection to
Tobacco
tobacco.
smoking has been around,
For sure. And there's a lot of things like I'm not trying to don't smoke, kids, obviously. I'm not trying to justify smoking or encourage smoking by any means, but we also do millions of things that are bad for us. This is a little bit of a bad faith argument, a little bit, but are we going to ban Coke Classic? Are we going to ban butter? We better fucking not ban butter. But you know what I mean?
Hush your mouth about butter, Ryan.
Well, exactly.
Hush your mouth.
No, exactly. Married into a Ukrainian family.
Nobody. Chef.
Yes. Nobody. No. I fully embrace butter. But my point being, we know things are bad for us, and we have all kinds of conversations about people accessing the healthcare system. We look at wait lists for surgeries. We learned a lot about obviously through COVID. If people weren't vaccinated, we know that they were ineligible for organ donation, right? And that started a big. The policy had been in place forever, and it pertained to a lot of different vaccines, but it included the COVID vaccine. And once we got there, people started talking about access to healthcare. So we've had people muse about, if you're a smoker, should you have full access to the healthcare system? Most reasonable people would say, well, of course you should. But then those same reasonable people must also acknowledge that smokers and other people are causing disproportionate strain on the budgets and the resources of the healthcare system, right? These are all facts.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I still think cigarettes, there's nothing good about it. And you're seeing these resurgences. What is old is new again. Starting to see kids smoking again. You're starting to see smoking in movies and Netflix again. Why? And smoking is not cool. Smoking is gross. It stinks. It's bad for your health. It causes cancer. I mean, really, you can say, yeah, knock yourself out and go and smoke. But if it's not available, kids are not going to buy cigarettes. I mean, they say vaping is a safer alternative, but vaping has also got health problems associated with it.
I think vaping's worse because you got the candy flavors, the fruit flavors, and kids automatically think it's an alternative to smoking. Because we're really
People
talking
think
about
safer,
we're talking about
healthier.
nicotine delivery systems, right? And kids think, hey, because it's not tobacco, it's better for me. It's not. You're inhaling chemicals into your lungs, and it's probably we're going to see in the next 10 to 20 years that it's probably just as bad as inhaling.
Yeah. David Penner makes a very good point as well. Says, hey, arguing with people in internet live stream chats is bad for us, but we still do it. I love that, David.
It doesn't cause cancer,
It doesn't cause cancer as far as we know. And other people are making the good point as well that if you outlaw cigarettes or make them unavailable, people are still going to get them. People are still going to find them. It's just going to fuel the black market. You're going to have cartons of cigarettes falling off the backs of trucks. People are still going to get their smokes. I don't know.
So I have the perspective of being the mother of somebody born in 2007. And watching the friend group and who's vaping and who's smoking and who's anti both of those things. And I agree with what you just said in terms of if you outlaw it, that won't really change much other than the fact that it'll be more expensive and perhaps more dangerous for people to get their hands on it. To think that it'll just all of a sudden make it so that kids won't start is, I think, naive to believe. I absolutely have so many conversations with my son about not becoming addicted to nicotine and also being careful. the connection that Lynda was making to drugs. It's back when we were experimenting with both cigarettes and with, pot and perhaps some harder drugs for some teenagers. It wasn't like playing Russian roulette the way it is now. And to Johnny's point about the vaping, I mean, you can be just a couple of days into vaping and be profoundly addicted to it because the nicotine levels are so high in the candy floss flavored.
I think it's more addictive. I think it's more addictive because you can.
That's what I'm saying.
You can literally
way more nicotine. Way more nicotine is put into those vapes, and they sell like crazy. Weird.
Well, and you don't smell disgusting after you vape. Your breath isn't brutal. Like, you know what I mean? I've seen people in the chat sort of reminiscing. I think back to my bartending days. It's wild. I mean, I never feel as old as I feel when I start looking back on my like early 20s and, when I was like bartending at Earl's and people just, I mean, part of our job was like emptying out people's ashtrays. And
me too.
You would just be surrounded by it. The comical reality of the smoking section and the non-smoking section separated by like a house plant,
or on a flight. Are you sitting
Yeah.
and smoking on this flight?
Remember in restaurants when there used to be the smoking section? It's like just
hilarious.
behind your booth,
just
right
behind.
behind.
Oh no, he's in
Just
the
right
smoke.
over
It's
there.
okay that he's smoking.
Right
And Justin here is
When I first worked at ITV, we used to smoke at our desk. You'd sit there with your typewriter, type in your script and smoke. News anchors used to smoke on the air, the old
one of the
news
most
anchors and
famous.
Walter
Edward
Cronkite
R.
and stuff.
Murrow used to smoke during the broadcast all the time, and like, to be honest, it looks super cool.
My grandmother used to drive a school bus way back in the day, and she used to smoke while driving kids to school.
Wow. Have you guys seen the movie Maestro? I had to pause it in the middle because every single solitary scene, there's every scene.
Why did you have to
smoking.
pause it?
To be honest, I didn't love the movie.
Oh, I thought you were saying it was like
I paused it just like, okay, enough with the smokes, and I can't really understand what anybody's saying because they're all talking through their cigarettes.
Okay.
It was in the way. But it was of a day, right?
It was a major prop
of the day
back in the day. I mean, it was like a totally normal thing. I wanted to get to Justin's comment here. He talking about banning cigarettes. He says it's, we're talking personal choice. He goes, but interesting, this show today is not bringing up alcohol. He says that causes a ton of harm, but don't you dare talk about taking away people's beer and wine. I actually did just a tiny bit of digging. We knew we were going to talk about this today, and so this is a study from 2018, or a recommendation, so it's 5 years old, but still, the World Cancer Research Fund, people can Google it, the WCRF guidelines, pointed out, based on studies that were compiled using research involving more than 51 million people, okay? So pretty good sample size globally. In 2018, the World Cancer Research Fund recommending that cutting bacon and alcohol out of your diet can reduce your risk of cancer by 40%. Cutting bacon and alcohol reduces your risk by 40%. How many people would still blaze forward with their bacon and their booze knowing that they were at higher risk of cancer? I would say most.
Everyone, yeah, probably. Yeah. Come on, it's
Lynda
bacon.
loves bacon. I'm just going to tell you right now, Lynda loves bacon.
So we'll...
And I never have it.
We'll put on motorcycle helmets and we'll wear seatbelts for the most part. The majority of us will try to take sort of proactive decisions on our health, but there are some things that for us as humans are just non-starters. If it's something you enjoy, people will know that, smoking cigarettes is one thing, but you talk to real cigar aficionados, people that have a well-stocked humidor, they don't consider it to be the same as cigarette smoking. There's no way to it's not healthy. Nobody thinks
I love it when cigar
healthy.
smokers, Ryan, say, oh, but we don't inhale.
Yeah. I mean, it's true, but it's maybe not.
Is it though?
Yeah, I mean, in a way. I mean, this is something that I like the odd cigar, I'll be honest. But
Sure.
I mean, really, if we're talking about health, if you're making a decision purely and solely based on health, then you're not smoking anything. Like, you're not bringing smoke in your mouth and your lungs. That just seems to be obvious.
But in a cigar room, you're definitely inhaling it. If
for
it's
sure,
all around you.
You're around
Yeah,
it. You're
it's
breathing
coming
it.
in.
It's it's like the kids on the school
It's
bus your
smoking.
grandma was driving.
It's-
No, I'm
it's
taking
smoking.
a swipe at your grandma. Hey, before we run out of time, and this has been so much fun. I can't believe that the hour has just flown by. I have to ask you two about one of the more prominent British Columbians. He seems to raise the ire of the general populace about once every 5 to 10 years, whether he's building his massive shoreline estate or suggesting that bigger people weren't ever the target market for the company that made him a billionaire. Chip Wilson is back in the spotlight. The company, formerly obviously Lululemon, he's relinquished his board seat, but he's still a major shareholder, distancing itself from his comments on the, quote, whole diversity and inclusion thing. I have to imagine the two of you are paying attention to this story.
Chip should just stop talking. Stop talking, Chip. It's just
Yeah.
everything that comes out of this man's mouth sounds ridiculously insulting to people, and in particular women. It's remarkable to me that he is so twisted in how he looks at the brand that he built that has become so incredibly popular, and now he's upset because it's inclusive. Sit down, rich man. Sit down.
He says,
Yeah.
he says Lululemon is trying to become, this is an article in Forbes, by the way, a feature in Forbes magazine. He says they're trying to become like the Gap. They're trying to be everything to everybody. The definition of a brand is that you're not everything to everybody. You got to be clear that you don't want certain customers coming in. He says that the Athletic wear's new ads are unhealthy, sickly, and that the people featured in the ads are not inspirational, Lynda.
Well, for one thing, he's a billionaire. And I think that, when you get up into those lofty levels, you stop associating and sort of relating to the common man. So I think on just the tiniest level, I can understand what he's saying, but he is expressing it in an offensive way. And not in a very smart way, because as a business person, you would think you want to include everyone. You would like everyone to buy your products. But what I guess he's saying and not doing it very well is that if someone's complaining that you can see through the yoga pants, maybe it's because you're significantly overweight and the material is stretched. I mean, it's still an offensive thing to say. I have to be careful because Mr. Chip Wilson's son lives right above me in my condo. So I got to make sure that I don't say anything that
I'm wearing Lululemon.
I think that
I am too. I'm wearing Lululemon right now.
I think
I got
you
a couple
should,
of great friends who work there, and they are forward thinking and inclusive and smart, and it's a successful brand, and it's successful because Chip Wilson exited in 2015. Yes, he's a major shareholder, but for whatever reason, I don't think he likes the fact that it is as successful as it is without him at the helm. Lululemon is ever a larger brand than it was before, and he's certainly reaping the benefits of the profits. I think rich men should shh.
Lynda, what do we have to pay you to pick up your laptop, head upstairs, knock on the door of Wilson Jr. and ask him about this? That would be real talk.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. Yeah, no.
Make sure you
I
follow.
don't know. By the way, Chip Wilson has the most expensive home we just discovered through the BC assessments.
Oh, yeah.
I think his home in Vancouver is worth $80 million or something. So
Yeah.
Imagine what the property taxes are on that.
The Daily Hive reporting that Chip Wilson's Point Grey property in Vancouver is now valued at $81 million. It would be like $9 million in Edmonton, but still. I saw that Michael Bublé has the priciest home in Burnaby, I think it was.
It's bubbly.
One of his 5 homes.
Michael Bublé. Yeah, Bublé a little bit more likable than Chip Wilson, but this is
just a little.
Yeah, but that Point Grey property is that Wilson one. That's not even the same one as the. I'm a little bit out of my depth. I don't know all the details, but didn't he was constructing this massive property on a shorefront
He
somewhere.
bought like
right?
That's the
3
one.
lots.
Oh, that
right?
is
That's
the one. That's the one.
It's down. Yeah, I was just walking my dogs down there yesterday. It's the one where he quite famously, for his wife's 40th birthday a number of years ago, hosted the Red Hot Chili Peppers concert at his home. He bought up 2 properties in Point Grey, right on the water, facing into English Bay, and created this sort of fortress of a home down there. So that's the $80 million assessed value home.
There you
Point
go.
Grey Road. You can look it up. There it is.
There
it
you
is.
go. We got an aerial shot for those watching on
So
YouTube.
I walked on the beach just in front of that yesterday.
You're allowed? Can you walk right past the house?
Oh yeah. Yeah, but it's raised. So beach level is lower down. But
you didn't have like people with earpieces and aviator sunglasses coming down
Nobody
and seeing
cares
what
that
you were
much.
up to?
Nobody cares that much about Chip Wilson here.
Yeah,
No.
fair enough.
No, he's riding his bike all over town.
Yeah. Oh, is that right? Is he still in the public eye? Like you'd see him around town?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I don't have a personal problem with him other than when he starts telling what type of body you should have to shop at Lululemon.
Yeah,
that's why I have a problem with Chip Wilson. Otherwise, I don't really care.
My brain right now is saying, wrap the show. That was a great quote that Jody just gave us, wrap the show. But then my gut is saying, I kind of want to dig into this for a second. I don't know why. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment. But while I find his comments to be distasteful and rude, I'm not 100% sure that he's wrong about businesses identifying who their target demographic is and not worrying as much about people that aren't the target demographic. And he said it in a way that's
Right.
that it like offends people and that comes across as fat phobic. And I think that he uses some words that were not very generous. But at the core of his comment, he's not really wrong, you know? Like as a business.
No, see, that's what I agree with you on that point. I can understand it. I get where he's going. I just think he wasn't thinking it through or he didn't care. And he kind of expressed it in an offensive way.
Yeah.
He could have said, hey, listen, you know what? We are all about the athleisure market, fit people who make exercise a regular part of their life. And, our target audience is the demo of this and that. It's just that you would think a business person would want all customers, not try to push anybody away. But maybe he was trying to make Lululemon more exclusive and only for super gorgeous, fit people. I don't know.
Yeah. And different
I know
fashion
lots of
brands
people
have
with
done that.
diverse body types who are super fit and
Of
active
course.
and need athletic gear. And
also what's the
whole
suggestion that
body
like
thing bugs
on
me.
your fitness journey that you have to have arrived before you can start wearing fit? Like it doesn't make sense actually. But I guess I'm just saying, generally speaking, the point, it's like, we've got into this same conversation before with, certain restaurants that have said that their female lounge servers have to wear heels. And then it became this big thing and there was big protests and people said, well, no, you can't force people to wear heels. And at the end of the day, again, while it comes across as a bit clumsy and it's a bit of a PR issue, and it has been in past for restaurants like Earl's and Cactus Club and others, it's a private business. And if you want to be a lounge server there and you don't want to wear heels, well, it's maybe not a fit for you. And there's lots of lounges where you don't have to wear heels. I know that everyone's going to say, well, that's a really privileged point of view, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, it's a private business. They can set their own terms.
As long as the rule for wearing heels applies to the guys as well, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, that's right. And is it okay if there you go. Maybe they don't hire men in their lounge. And then people will say, well, what about that? But again, it's a private business, right?
But that's a uniform choice. So if you don't want to work there, believe me, I waitressed at 86th Street Music Hall and there was a wear heels thing. My heels were kitten heels this big and the other waitresses were wearing 4-inch spikes and I made more money than them because I could deliver quicker.
Yeah. And I've heard people have pointed out that like it's like physically very demanding to wear heels through a shift. I've only ever participated in the Walk a Mile fundraiser, so I've only worn heels for 30 minutes at a time.
So painful.
It's the worst. It's the worst. You should have seen though. I had these like sequin size 13. Oh my!
I want to see that. You got to send us a picture of that.
I borrowed them from a drag queen friend of mine, all for a good cause for the YWCA of Edmonton. Hey, love you too. Like honestly, I don't just throw away that word. I have so much respect and admiration for the both of you.
Back at ya.
We just love, and I mean when I say back by popular demand, I'm not joking. You should see when you two appear on this. Our live chat goes, oh my God, they're here. Lynda Steele and Jody Vance. You can catch them on Steele and Vance. Of course, check out checknews.ca. We'll have the link in the show notes. You can follow them on Twitter. And then, of course, you can also download and subscribe to their podcast. Make sure you show them some love there. Thursdays at 8 live Pacific time on Check. Happy New Year to you both, and thanks for doing this.
Happy New Year to you. Thanks for having us.
You got it. If what we have been talking about has lit a fire under you, and I know we've covered a lot of ground, gosh, like municipal political parties and homeless encampments and harm reduction and affordability and cigarettes and corporate mandates and demographic comments, and man, our inbox is always open to talk at RyanJesperson.com. In just a second, we're going to get into it with a weekly tradition where we're going to blow off a little steam, the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. But first, we want to recognize the support of partners of ours like our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy. They're Western Canada's busiest solar installer. You can find them on Instagram at Kubi Energy. I recommend that you follow them because you're going to learn something, I guarantee, when they talk about maybe the reliability of solar these days or the affordability, how the cost is coming down. You can learn something with every post on the Kubi Energy Instagram account. And don't forget, at kubienergy.ca, you can get a free solar quote. They'll get their team up there to install it first thing in the spring, but they got to do a bit of engineering planning ahead of time, so give yourself some runway there. Plus, they're always hiring for jobs in Kamloops, Calgary, Edmonton, and Lethbridge. Check out the career links at kubienergy.ca. If you're going, yeah, a new career sounds great, but I've got some schooling to do first, take a second today and check out athabascatu.ca. Athabasca University is Canada's open university with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. If you've been doing some schooling at other institutions, they're going to offer you transfer credits. If you're looking for special financial assistance, they've got a ton of different resources available for you. Your journey starts today at athabascau.ca. And a shout out to our friends at Complete Care Restoration. Johnny, check this out. They got a slick new website.
Yeah.
Hey, isn't that cool? At CompleteCareRestoration.ca. Professional property restoration services based out of Edmonton, but doing work across the province of Alberta, ready to respond 24/7. If, heaven forbid, you experience a nightmare like fire or flood, maybe you've discovered mold or asbestos on your property, you're going to want to leave it, obviously, to trained professionals. Nobody does a better job than the team at Complete Care Restoration. Jillian here says, Jespo, the issue was that private businesses had changed uniforms after somebody was already employed. I'll be honest, I don't know like all the details of it. I just remember this was a few years ago. It flared up, and it was a real PR problem for some of these restaurants that had their female lounge servers in heels for a long time, and there was like big public outcry around it. It's one of those things I think that like flies under the surface. There's millions of these issues in life. Flies under the surface. It's not really getting a lot of attention until it does. And then when it does, companies are in a position where they've got a real problem on their hands.
Yeah. Let them wear the comfortable shoes. What's the problem here?
Well, I don't know. If you're running a business where you want top shelf appearance,
sure,
right? You want to give off a vibe. I mean, does it make sense to have lounge servers in heels? Absolutely not. Of course not. But also, like, aesthetically, do you want your lounge servers in comfortable shoes? I mean, when you put it that way, it seems to make sense. But for some people, they'll say it's a private business. We can do whatever we want. And they're not wrong about that. Yeah, I'm sure that I would love to get an email from somebody that this has personally impacted or personally affected. Did you ever do the Walk a Mile fundraiser? Did you ever wear the heels walk around for half
I
an
remember
hour in
doing
heels?
it, when I was with the Bounce way back in the day.
Yeah,
I remember doing
so much
it.
respect.
Whew, I don't
Wild.
know. Women,
Wild.
I don't know how you do it.
I mean, curious.
And men who wear them, I don't know how you do
Will
it.
heels still be a thing in 100 years?
Sure.
Yeah,
of
you think?
course.
I wonder. The ladies got to let us know on that because, I don't know if that'll still be a thing in 100 years or not. Fashion evolves in some ways, and in some other ways, if it works, people stick with it, right? Every Friday, courtesy of our friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. I'm talking Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, Baseline Road. We give you a chance to blow off a little steam, to bring the heat. This is a chance to say what needs to be said, and we're asking you to bring us your hot takes, and you do through the week. These are the emails that we've received to talk at RyanJesperson.com, like this one from Gerald. This arrived just yesterday after I talked to Andrew McDougall, former Director of Communications for Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Great interview. If you missed it, check it out. That was our, what's the date today? Today is January 5th, right? So it was our January 4th episode with McDougall. Gerald says, listening to your pod, he's talking about Sean Kanungo, says, I'm a little bit perturbed. He says, I hear this all the time, but it's always spoken about in these vague musings. People are afraid to speak their mind. Nobody wants to say what they really mean. They're worried about the blowback. He says, on what? He says, Ryan, you brought up one topic, trans athletes in sport. Okay, he goes, that's one. He goes, give me 5 other topics that people tread lightly on. Honestly, Israel, Gaza, abortion. I mean, he says, we got think pieces on Gaza. We've had marches for parental rights. So what are people really afraid to talk about? Now, there is an issue of nuance. Is there an issue, or are people giving grace to learn on certain topics? I don't see people giving grace for people to learn on topics anywhere, Gerald, to be honest with you. He says, but if no one will be specific, no one will take on the nuance, maybe we should all stop belly aching. He says, I would like to hear you give us a list of 5 things people fear talking about and then do shows on them. He says, the problem is, and I don't think for a second that this is the case with Sean, but when people are super vague and say, you just can't speak your mind like you used to, it kind of sounds like I'm not allowed to say offensive things anymore. I miss being able to be a jerk and treat people poorly. So let's not be vague. That's from Gerald. Gerald, the beautiful irony of your email is that somebody talking about feeling like they can't talk about things is being ripped by you. Isn't that inherently Anyway, I digress. Thank you for your email. This from Steven, who says, hey, your listener, Garth, basically said this week that until a town of 5,000 people can completely run on renewables, we need to forget even talking about the idea, talk about greening the grid. He says, maybe let listener Garth know that Las Vegas, its city facilities, are now operating on 100% renewable energy. I was like, what? And so Steven goes on to say they launched a 100-megawatt solar farm. He says people can Google Boulder Solar One. The city was able to purchase enough green energy to power all of its 140 buildings, street lights, parks, and other facilities. He goes, obviously it's not enough power to power the hotels and the slot machines, but it's definitely a step in the right direction and a notable achievement. Let's not pretend, says Stephen, that progress is impossible or something that can only be achieved by 2050. That from Steven. That's a great email. And how about this one from Cam, who says, I wanted to respond to Garth, who wrote in talking about how environmentally friendly Canadian oil and gas is, but let's discuss how we're impacting where we eat and live. We have yet to allow water to be safely released from any of the oil sand sites. How can we claim environmental friendliness with a $300 billion liability with no secured funds while oil companies take their profits back to shareholders? He says, if oil and gas really was the way to go, why don't companies invest in more mines, more infrastructure? Companies are prioritizing extracting maximum value from existing assets as opposed to expanding them. Now, we need to use our current laws and tax dollars to transition the oil sands beyond combustion, electrify, and strengthen our electrical grid for renewable investment. He says, forget about this moratorium from a libertarian. Let's ensure that Alberta continues to lead the world, lead the nation in innovation. That is the real Alberta spirit, the real Alberta way. So, says Cameron, signing off, hey, Garth, wake up and pull your head out of the exhaust pipe. I like that one. We'll end there. The Flamethrower is proudly presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. When you're there, you let them know Real Talk sent you. Coming up next week, we're going to check in with Charles Adler, and Supriya Dwivedi's coming back for a chat early in 2024. We can't wait. Have a wonderful and safe weekend, everybody. One love. Thanks for supporting Real Talk.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, Executive